Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Identity Factor Podcast. My name is Robin Kiesler, and I will be your host. Let's go. So today, everyone, we're going to be talking with Mr. Greg Nyman. He is a life coach for men. He helps men overcome the mental stumbling blocks that are stalling their weight loss. Specifically, he helps them understand what's keeping them from getting the results that they want in their lives so that they can stay focused and motivated on the things that they actually want. And I'm going to give you a second, Greg, to just introduce yourself briefly, and then we're going to dive in today to talking about this idea of leadership and what that means to us, and also how we navigate our businesses and our lives, helping clients and other people as leaders with some of the various just mental and emotional health challenges that we all go through personally. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about how that interplay works for each of us. And having said that, Greg, welcome to the podcast, and go ahead and introduce yourself. And if there's anything that you'd like to share, and then we'll jump in.
Love it. Thanks for having me. As Robin said, I'm a life coach that helps men with weight loss. My previous life, I was a manager of a shipping company, a terminal of a shipping company, very low quality of life. Thought work was not even a thing. Self care was terrible. That ended really badly. And now we're here and exploring like the beauty of thought work and the beauty of emotions and feelings and actually the strength it takes to do this work instead of just shove it down, which is very detrimental to our psyche.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not always easy, is it?
No, it's not always easy.
It's not always easy. And I think, so one of the things that for me has been kind of interesting to consider is like, okay, so like I'm thinking about the people that are out there that are like that don't want to do it, right? Like sometimes it's like I don't want to dive in to that like stuff, right? Like I've stuffed it all in the closet. It's in there, out of my way, and like I do a pretty good job of like pretending
Yeah,
and
right there.
showing up.
You're right
Yeah.
there. You're dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
You're putting on that shellac and like the locks on the cabinet and whatnot,
Mm.
and you're managing your mind around not diving into that stuff. You're really dealing with it, maybe not
Yeah.
in a live in color version, but on a
Yeah.
subconscious level, it's always there. It's always eating at you.
Yeah.
It's defining you without defining you, right? You're letting it, oh, all these skeletons in my closet. I can't put myself out there because what if somebody finds out? What if somebody finds out? It's fine. Who cares? Like pull it out, look at it, get rid of what's not serving you, what is serving you, keep and move on
Yeah.
instead of dragging this with you as you progress through life.
I think that's actually a super interesting point that you just made, Greg, that where it's like you are already dealing with it. Whether you realize it or not, you're just dealing with it in a different way. But I actually love the feeling that that created inside of me when you said that, because it felt like it truly felt a little bit honoring and validating, right? Because I think sometimes it's really easy in this field of work to be like, well, I should really, do the work and go to therapy and get some coaching and talk about the stuff. And like, I think for there are a lot of people, like I love this idea of just meeting ourselves where we're at. And it doesn't mean that we
Totally.
have to stay there. We might choose to make a different choice. And but like for me, I tend to choose to jump in and like go through the closet. Like I'm a masochist that way. I'm like, let's do it. But like especially recently, there have been a few times like where I felt the fear of like not wanting to. Like,
Oh,
which is actually
absolutely.
somewhat new for me. Like, for the most part, I'm the one that's like, let's go there, let's do the thing. But there have been a few incidences recently, especially with certain issues that have been coming up, that I'm like, wow, actually, I get it when people say I don't want to go there.
Oh yeah, totally. It's scary. Like let's be real. Like it's scary sometimes, you know. I know for me personally when I was after my heart attacks and I was becoming a life coach going through certification, it got dark. It got
Yeah.
way dark, and there was an emergency phone call to a very good friend of mine who's a life coach, emergency phone call to my therapist at the time that's helping me with my PTSD. And I mean, it got really, really, really dark.
Mhm.
So it's scary. Like ever since then, I've been nervous. Like, I want to do this work, but I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to curtail it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to break myself out of that spiral,
Mm.
and because
Yeah.
I don't want to go to that dark place again. Like that's not who I am, and I don't want to be there. So like the thought of even looking at something slightly negative, maybe it's scary and intimidating. And one of my really good coach friends, she was like, well, just sit with that.
Mm.
Sit with the fear about doing the work.
Mm.
Feel the fear, feel the feelings, feel the guilt, the shame, the judgment, whatever it is. Just sit with those emotions about doing the work so you can prove to yourself, hey, I can pull myself out. Hey, it's not as bad as I think it is.
Mhm.
And definitely honor where you're at currently by doing that instead of judging yourself and saying I should do this, I should dive in, I should go head first like Robin and all the other courageous people of the world. No, I'm that's not me, that's not where I'm at right now. Sometimes yes, but right now no, and that's fine. Let's honor this experience, let's have all the thoughts and feelings around it so we can actually make progress instead of jumping full in and
Yeah.
feel
Well,
like
and
we're
what I think is
drowning.
interesting too is like I think part of the reason that I had that experience recently was like, and I'll be curious to know what you think about this or if you've ever had this experience, but what I realized is I was like, you know what? I think that our brains are really good at protecting us.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so I think there are some of this work that's now coming up for me I didn't even have awareness of before. And so it was like, sometimes the analogy that I use is like, it's like my life was such a mess. And it was like kind of looking at this lake that was just filled with like scum and stuff. And it was like, okay, I'm going to take the net. And I was able to start cleaning it up. But
Totally.
it was still in areas that where it was like, okay, I'm doing the work, I'm diving in. But it was still like there was such surface level stuff that I was cleaning. And so it's like now, like there are areas of my life, especially as I begin to step out into the world more and really own my position in my life, in my business, in stepping into leadership roles and in areas that are of growth, right? Like that's the part that really in a lot of ways trigger me to want to do this series that we're doing right now because what I found is as I found more stability, found more success, started creating, a bigger life for myself and kind of cleaned up those surface areas, all of a sudden, Greg, it was like the universe was like, she's ready. And it was like,
Totally.
bam. And now it's like showing me this deep, deep, profound thing that I was like, my brain didn't have awareness of. So it was like it opened another closet door.
Oh, absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that one's got big scary monsters in it. We don't want to go there.
Yeah, I was like, whew, that one felt like, I was like, that feels a little like, okay, I get it. Like I'm being challenged now to go to deeper levels. And so it was kind of a neat experience to feel that fear again.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of coaching, right? Like you have somebody there that's, you're like, no, there's monsters under my bed. And they're like, yeah, there probably are. Let's look at it. Let's shine a flashlight on it. Let's go there together and look and see. And, you shine a flashlight under your bed and it's actually just your teddy bear. It's not, Dracula like you thought it was.
Mm. One of the things that has been so cool about this too, Greg, is I remember talking with a client about this, and I loved the way that she described it because it has been such this experience for me as well. She said, at first I was afraid to be that vulnerable with someone, and I was afraid that if I went to those places of my life, and I've heard clients say this so many times, right? They're like, I don't want to feel the sadness because I'm afraid that I'll never come out of it. Like if I go to that
Totally.
place, like I am deeply afraid that I will never be able to come out of it. And right now,
Absolutely.
like you said, I'm dealing with it. It's in the closet. And that's what I loved about like it felt validating because I'm like, that is a strategy for dealing with it. And we don't need to shame
Absolutely.
it. Like if
No,
that's where you're at, like that's fine. But like it was pretty cool for her. She's like, once I found the courage to open myself up and go into it though, the way that we did, she's like, what I realized was like I was afraid that I was going to be naked and vulnerable and alone. But she was like, it felt like I was naked and vulnerable, but I wasn't alone.
exactly.
And that I didn't expect. She's like, it felt so much more loving than I really expected. I expected it to be like raw and painful in just this intolerable way, but it was raw and painful, but it was with this essence of like love and support. And it kind of feels a little bit like a magic that I didn't expect. And I totally resonate with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is 100% accurate. It does feel scary and vulnerable and like, oh my gosh, like everybody's seeing my dirty laundry. Oh no, this is going to be bad. Um, but having an ally
Hmm.
with you, it takes a lot of that away, right? Like we all think that like we're the only ones that have these horrible thoughts about, ourselves and like, possibly in my case, possibly doing self-harm and, ending the situation, all of those thoughts. We think we're the only ones. We think, oh my gosh, like nobody has these thoughts. Nobody thinks like this. So I can't tell people that I think like this. And the more you let yourself be vulnerable and get coached and, even have therapy, you realize you're more normal than you think you are, right? Like we all have these thoughts that we don't necessarily like. And it's okay that we have them. We can look at them, process the feelings around them, but we don't have to live there. Just because we have, a thought about self-harm, that doesn't mean, occasionally, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're suicidal, right?
Right.
Like we
It
just
doesn't
have that
define you.
thought. Right. It
Yeah.
doesn't define you. And
Hmm.
when we talk about it and explore with people that we trust, like a coach or a therapist or a mental health professional, it helps us normalize it and figure out what we want to do with it. Right? Like,
Hmm.
okay, I had this thought. What do I want to do with it? I
Yeah.
want to acknowledge it. I want to honor it. I want to give it its time. And I want it to just flow through whenever it feels to
Yeah.
flow through. I don't want it to stick here.
Yeah. So when we talk about this is a super interesting segue I think into kind of this next piece that I have curiosity around is like, okay, so for the people that are listening, like how do we like how do we take those parts of ourselves that we oftentimes feel tempted to hide or not acknowledge, like right, that we so often think of as like weakness. And I think there's a couple components here that I'd like to dive into. The first one is as it relates to leadership. So, for people that are out there in the world feeling called to be an example of what's possible, feeling called to help be a light, right, and a model for other people, like what, first of all, what do you think it means to be a leader? Like, can we just define
So,
that term?
yeah, so leadership, we have when you become a leader, a manager, a supervisor, a CEO, whatever, industry leader, influencer, whatever, however you want to put it,
Hmm.
we put all this pressure on ourselves.
Right.
I have to be perfect, right?
Exactly.
I have to show them what's possible. Okay, yeah, show them what's possible, but show them what is as well, right? Like, yeah, I had all this garbage, all this baggage, all these negative thoughts, and I did it anyway, right? Instead of the image that people put out when they're in a leadership role is, I've got my shit together. I'm perfect, right? that's the image that we see, and allowing people to see the other side too, like, yeah, I have anxiety every time we do a podcast. I don't know how to manage people. Like, things come up and I have no idea what to do, and I figure it out
Mhm.
instead of just, no, I've got it together. Anything that happens, I will handle perfectly. No, you won't. You're human, right? When we become a leader, we think we're a leader and then everything else and then human sometime along the way. When in reality, we're a human first, maybe a leader second.
Mhm.
So allowing yourself to be human, allowing yourself to fuck up,
Yeah.
like allow that to be a thing. Yeah, okay. I made this call. It was the total wrong call. It, did whatever,
Yeah.
cost people money or,
Mhm.
delayed this or that or the other. Oh well, I learned from it,
Yeah.
like I don't have to beat myself up about that for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Take this as an opportunity to show people,
Mhm.
hey, look, we made a mistake. I made a
Yeah.
mistake. Here's how I'm going to handle it.
Yeah, and so when we look at these this conversation that we're having around like the mental health or emotional health challenges that we all as humans, like you said, like if you have a human brain, you've got this stuff, right? We
Totally.
all do. If you have a human brain, you have a shadow side, right? That's
Absolutely.
you have the day and the night, the joy and the pain, right?
The
The
50
darkness,
50.
the 50-50, right? Like it's just there. You've got the failure and the success. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to have huge wins.
What
And yeah, go ahead.
an interesting point. Like, what I noticed in my own experience with management and burnout is I was closing myself off to all the negative emotions, right? And we think we can do this,
Hmm.
and we can, but what we don't realize is we're closing ourselves to all the positive ones as well, right? Like, you have to feel sorrow to feel joy, you have to feel sadness to feel happy. When you close one off, you close the other off. And this is how people, at least in my experience burnout, because they're not allowing themselves to be themselves, they're not allowing themselves to feel, they're not processing their emotions.
Hmm.
We're just going down this very narrow tunnel until it manifests in a very spectacular way.
Yeah,
Not always, but in my case,
it
it
can.
did.
Yeah. Well, and I think like for me, I think that part of the reason that we do that is because we have this idea of what it means to be a leader that's
Yes,
very, like you said, it's very masculine, it's very performance driven, it's very um and again, this may not be for everyone, but I think, I think that this definition of leadership or this image of leadership is beginning to change, and I think there's a new generation that's really opening up to this idea of heart-centered leadership that is more human and that it allows for all of that, and I still think it's a conversation worth having because there are people out there, I think, and I feel it, right? That old holdover of like, well, if I'm going to be a leader, that means I need to, like you said, have my shit together. I need to have it all figured out. I need to kind of create this persona of this
yeah,
powerful, effective human.
right,
And it's like that other side, that 50-50, those get kind of shut down. And it's like that doesn't have a place in this arena, in this identity of leadership. And
totally.
my question is, what if that's not true, A, which I know it's not, spoiler alert, there's the answer, but also, but like, so it's like we know that that's not true, but what I'm curious about, Greg, is in your experience, how has that not been true, and in fact the opposite? Like, how is it true that in order to truly be an effective leader that can make an impact and change lives, how is it the case that in order to do that, that you actually need to be willing to embrace that those parts of you that maybe you don't want the world to see?
Yeah, so like essentially for me, being a leader, it's getting in the trenches, doing the work, in my previous life, like I got out on a forklift, I labeled freight, I loaded trucks, I did the things, right? Like, I was out there with my people,
Mhm.
doing what I'm asking them to do, right?
Mhm.
In this realm, the same applies, right? Like, hey, Robin, let's go and explore your deep, dark secrets and see what's in there. But yeah, we're not doing that for me though. Mm-mm. Well, we can do it for you.
Right.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't compute. Whereas if people are seeing you be real and human, they'll be more willing to open up themselves.
But I think the reason that it's so important is because you really are able to understand another person once you've walked that path, right?
Oh,
You know
absolutely.
how scary it is. You're able to meet them where they're at. And as a person that is looking e- to really excavate that in someone else and help them amplify their light, you have to know how to help them deal with the darkness.
Yeah, you have to know how to deal with your own.
And you can't do that unless you've dealt with your own.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
don't mean and I think that's again not to say that you have nobody has to do this work,
Right.
right? Of course, but to just realize that there's such power in being a person who has that experience, who has really done that and knows what that's like.
And then sharing that with the world, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I've found that my story is very powerful,
Mhm.
very relatable. People have gone through similar things. People have gone through, traumas and, experiences and medical issues and jobs that they didn't necessarily like. And telling your story, both like to a person or, in your marketing or however you want, like it makes you more real and relatable. And it also like gives, for me, like when I was starting this work, seeing people that had done it,
Mhm.
right? Or that are doing it. Because I mean, we're never done, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a constant evolution, and that in and of itself is a big milestone, right? Like this work never ends. So we don't need to beat ourselves up about it. But um seeing people go through it, seeing people do it, seeing people be real, seeing people, be emotional on calls and this and that and the other, it gave me courage.
Mm.
Oh, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not, yeah, that sucked for them, right?
Yeah.
But it's okay. Somebody caught them,
Yeah.
right? Somebody who understood, somebody who's been through that was able to catch them and go, okay, it's fine. You're okay. Let's process this. Let's sit here for a minute. And okay, next time we're going to try it a little bit longer, maybe.
Mhm.
I don't have to process, well, 42 years of, or 43 years now of
Mhm.
pain and agony in the next
Mhm.
10 minutes,
Mhm.
right? We can do it little chunks at a time, little bits at a time, and that's fine.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode, I want to invite you to come join us on May 19th through the 21st for the Shadowside Leadership Summit. It's going to be an entire weekend where we're going to dive into these conversations around identity and leadership, around mental and emotional health, around how to support ourselves so that we can truly lead others in a more impactful way, that we also get to experience connection and joy along the journey. ShadowsideLeadershipSummit.com. Go sign up and we'll see you inside. If you had to name your shadows, what would you name them? What do you think they would be?
Well, fear for sure. And then judgment, guilt, shame.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so when you notice that those are what your shadows are, and and as you've shared a little bit about your story of really being willing to go ahead and embrace those things and do that work of going through them, what do you think has been the biggest transformation and the biggest result that has created for you on the other side, either personally or in your business?
So personally, real brief history here.
Yeah.
2020, February 2020, I had a heart attack. That's what my 20 years of management and mismanagement of my brain
Mm-hmm.
ended with.
Okay.
Um, and then for the next 5 months, all I could think about was having another one. And shocker, I had another one.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got into um, coaching and thought work and this and that and the other, like managing my brain. And fast forward till December of last year when I had brain surgery. I went into that surgery knowing it was going to be okay. Like everybody else was freaking out. I was fine. I was cool as a cucumber. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
we're good. We've got the best people on this. We've done all the things to get here. This is going to be completely fine. And it was completely fine. You know, the recovery was not as like I had all these illusions of grandeur, right? Like, oh, I've got 18 weeks off of everything. So I can totally like, really dive in on my business, really grow this, really get my marketing together, blah, 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 which no, like
Yeah.
you're recovering from surgery and then, having that hit you in the face. No, this isn't going to happen. And being able to, oh, you're right. I do want, not need, want to give myself that time to recover. I'm going to make this as therapeutic as I possibly can for myself. And if that means doing nothing, that means doing nothing. And that's completely okay. Like the ability to give and it's made my self-care amazingly better because I give myself permission. It's something I want to do. Yes, it's necessary, sure, but it's something I want to do. Took it to the next level, right? Like taking that time to, read a book or go on a walk or, veg out and watch Netflix, but actively choosing these things
Mm-hmm.
as self-care versus buffering or distracting myself with these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that the ability to do that has been life changing.
How has your journey with learning how to meet yourself with your at, right? Learning how to just notice like, the pressure that you might be putting on yourself or the shame or the guilt when those shadow sides of yourself kind of rear their head and you notice like how they're starting to want to show up in your life. How has that process of learning how to deal with those and learning how to deal with yourself more gently, more lovingly, how has that informed your leadership capacity and style as you work with your clients, as you work in your business? How has that changed the way you show up for your business?
Um, well, I've always showed up, well, not always, but for the most part, I've showed up compassionate and understanding
Mm-hmm.
for my clients, or I thought I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once I started doing the shadow work and realizing that guilt and shame only come from judgment. So
Mm-hmm.
let's work on the judgment. Why are we judging ourselves? This is optional. Why are we judging ourselves so harshly? And start working on that component. The rest is starting to fall into place, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you get rid of the judgment, the guilt, the shame, and all that goes off the top. And oh, I can look at this box versus having to dig 5 feet of judgment
Mm-hmm.
off of it. I can look and I can see. And seeing the change that it's made in myself,
Mm-hmm.
I can bring that to my clients and go, hey, there's a better way or a different way to do this, a more effective way, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, understand where they're at and, you know, understand the judgment mechanism and the guilt and shame that go with it and how to break that machine, right? How to derail that freight train and actually start doing work, um, or allowing yourself to do work that is going to get you to where you want to go instead of, dragging this anchor with you up the side of the mountain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have around this concept of mental health?
That something's wrong with them. people that need mental health help, assistance, counseling, therapy, coaching, there's something wrong with you. You're not a normal functioning human.
Mm.
No, you totally are, right? We all have our issues, our demons, our shadow work, whatever we want to deal with. And coming and getting help with that, you're actually functioning better than people who aren't addressing that.
Mm.
Like it shouldn't be this stigma, this shame that, oh, I went to therapy. Oh, well, why? What's wrong with you?
Mm.
No, I took charge of my mental health and got help.
Mm.
That should be celebrated, not condoned.
Mhm. Yeah. What are the ways that you have made mental health or mental fitness an everyday supportive practice in your life and in your business?
Um, so I run models every morning. I do a thought download, run, two or three, sometimes four or five models. I do meditation. I do journaling. I really start getting it all down on paper and really, I mean, getting coached quite a bit too, to be honest. But I've made this a priority versus, oh yeah, I've got a gym membership,
Mhm.
right? Like you're going and actually working out, actually doing the thing. It's one thing to, show up at coaching sessions or therapy sessions and yeah, I go every week. Okay, cool. Well, do you talk about real things or do you talk about the weather?
Mhm.
And okay, your coach, your therapist is giving you this awareness.
Mhm.
What are you doing with it?
Mm.
Right? Just because, oh, I see what I'm creating for myself. Okay, now what? What do you
Mhm.
do? And taking it to the next level. And okay, yes, I've got this awareness. What do I want to do? How do I want to pick this? Do I want to do anything with it? And making those active decisions and choices daily, and I mean, not every single day, right? Like I'm human and I forget sometimes.
Mhm.
Not making that the end of the world, right? Like
Mm.
giving yourself compassion and grace and go, okay, yeah, you woke up late and you didn't get your morning started the way you wanted. Not a big deal. We'll learn from that. We'll look at it with compassion instead of going, okay, I suck. I can't get up on time. What led up to that? Well, I didn't go to bed till 1:30 in the morning. Well, duh, you're not going to get up at 5. Like
Mhm.
it just doesn't happen. So let's you have a going to bed on time problem, not a getting up on time problem. Let's look
Mhm.
at what's actually going on and solve for it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think a lot of people like to shame themselves or be really hard on themselves because they think if they're being compassionate to themselves, then they're like letting themselves off the hook, which is
Yeah,
not the same thing.
they're going easy on themselves. Yeah.
Right. And it's like you can have accountability with for yourself and with yourself and do that without shaming yourself. You
Oh,
can have
absolutely.
accountability and compassion at the same time and move yourself forward in ways that are just more loving. You just don't have to beat the crap out of yourself in order to grow.
Yeah.
And you don't have to grow if you don't want to, right?
Yeah.
You can just stay where you are too. Like it's like none of it's a problem. Like nothing has gone wrong. I love
Yeah.
that.
You're perfectly fine the way you are. And you can choose to go this direction or that direction or stay.
It's just a choice.
Totally fine.
Yeah. What advice would you give to the people that are listening that are secretly kind of hiding a part of themselves that they feel ashamed of or that they don't know how to handle?
Um, well, if you're feeling ashamed, like we all have stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
normalizing that it's okay, bring it out, look at it, let go of it if it's not serving you. If it's something that happened in the past, I mean, even yesterday, you don't need to drag that with you if it's not serving you. It's more courageous than you think to reach out and find someone to assist you, to
Mhm.
guide you, to
Mhm.
help you, even, right? Like, I mean, you're helping yourself by finding someone to help you. And
Mhm.
that takes a lot of courage and, applaud that. Like, absolutely. You reach out for help. That's amazing. Good job. Go you. You're doing the hard thing.
Mhm.
I mean, we all think that not dealing with it is the strong thing to do, right? And no, it's not. It's really not. It takes true strength to do your shadow work, to look at your closet, to look at what's going on in your brain and actually manage your brain to get you to where you want to go instead of just let it tell you where you're going.
Yeah. And Greg, what has been for you your moment of greatest joy along this journey?
My moment of greatest joy, well, there were a couple. The first one was realizing that I'm more normal than I think I am, and there was help. And then the second one was with my brain surgery and just stepping out of myself and observing how I dealt with it, right? Like I was fine. I could have been freaking out, but I didn't. And people, did things or that were annoying, but I managed my brain around it and, spoke my truth. Like, my one of my good friends, he's like, "Hey, and this was 2 weeks before my brain surgery, right? Um, he's like, "Hey, I'm moving a week after my brain surgery." I'm like, "Okay, good for you." Like, what do you want me to do? Well, come and help. I'm like, dude, I'm having brain surgery. Like, you can borrow my truck and my trailer, but my physical body is not going to be capable of doing this.
Yeah.
And he's like, why? And I'm like, really? Like, my head's getting cut open. Like,
Yeah.
no. And, speak that truth to him in a way instead of, yelling at him and being like, you're an idiot. Just feel like,
Yeah.
look, I physically can't
Yeah.
and tell that truth. Like nothing against you. I just can't. And no, I'm not going to move my brain surgery. Just not.
Yeah.
And be able to sit in that space and not have all of that judgment. Oh, I'm not a good friend. I didn't help them out. I should have figured out a way. I should have moved my brain surgery. I should have da 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 and not having any of that take over.
Yeah.
Right. It was there and that's fine that it's there, but it didn't dominate. It didn't take over. I didn't feel all the guilt and shame. I just like, yeah, okay, I get why you're thinking that, but that's, not where we're going to live. We're going to live over here in the we're supporting ourselves,
Hmm.
um, model.
Yeah. I love that. And when you can learn how to support yourself that way, you're so much more capable of learning how to support someone else too.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. Greg, how can people find out more about you if they would like to be supported by you and be able to get to know you better?
Greg Nyman coaching. That's where I'm at on Facebook and or not Facebook on the web, and then on Instagram as well. And of course, I'm one of the fabulous coaches here at the Life Coach School. So, join up and sign up with us, and we'll totally help you out.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of the best coaches in the world work for the Life Coach School, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
It is the most healing space I think you could ever step into. Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for taking the time and sharing your story with us a little bit
Yep.
today.
Thank you for having me. It was amazing.
If you enjoyed this episode, take a screenshot of it for me and share it on your favorite social media platform so that your friends can find out about it too. And in the meantime, I just want to invite you to remember that you are beautiful, that you are worthy, that you belong, and that you are powerful beyond measure. See you next time.